Repercussions for women?
It's long been a strange relationship. Rosie Duffield's view on trans policy put her in the spotlight and at odds with her party.
People with so much more money than the average person spending somebody's yearly salary on their...
Starmer and the Labour Party are facing backlash over high-value gifts and donor influence. Reports reveal that Starmer accepted nearly $500,000 worth of luxury gifts, including designer suits and VIP event tickets. His wife, Victoria, also received high-end perks. Many of these gifts were not declared immediately, raising serious ethics concerns.
Vote on an issue that means something to you, and for that we read trans issues, women's issues. But now she's out because if you'd have been suspended, it wouldn't have been news. But to be the first, to hold now the record as the fastest MP to jump ship after a general election, this has scored some points.
I think that's cynical, though, Steve, the way you look. I mean, I think Rose Duffield's a person of great integrity, and she was absolutely brutal in what she said. She said this.
Labour, a party of integrity, has ties to wealthy donors, including Lord Ali, a media mogul and major Labour fundraiser. Ali provided lavish gifts and exerted influence over party policies. Initially, Labour planned to ban foreign political donations to prevent undue influence in UK politics. However, after Ali's intervention, the ban disappeared, opening the door for foreign funds to flow in.
The place they were going. Yeah, I mean, Keir Starmer, considering he ran for election on this platform of like, oh, I'm the most unimpeachable, the most pious, the best person, there's going to be no sleaze, I'm a pure selfless public servant, and then also we're going to have the most efficient, effective managerial, there's going to be no more chaos, and we've just had chaos.
Starmer's campaign received PS4 million from a Cayman Islands hedge fund after ditching the foreign donor ban, raising concerns about the fund's willingness to invest in UK politics. Labour MP Rosie Duffield, a critic of ST's leadership, resigned from the party, accusing Starmer's team of prioritising wealthy donors over ordinary voters, highlighting the potential for greed and power taking over.
For dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump.
Joining me now is...
Labour members are concerned about the party's direction, fearing it may shift Labour away from its working-class roots and align it more with corporate interests.
Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Dame Caroline.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My constituent Susan is going to miss out on her winter fuel allowance this winter because she's just £10 above the pension credit threshold. So as well as losing out on this vital money to keep her house warm, she also doesn't get the £150 warm home discount. She doesn't get the £169.
The question arises whether Starmer is comfortable with elite donors and what happens if he becomes Prime Minister. The Labour Party, which has long positioned itself as the party against corporate influence, has a history of high-profile donor scandals. Subscribe for more deep dives.
Should that body have picked that up at an earlier stage and prevented those deaths?
Just more generally, Tom, obviously Sir Keir Starmer and David Lammy are trying to strengthen relations with the Trump administration, but there is, most notably, and we saw it yesterday in the Oval Office, a political vibe shift here. In so many...
The Cash for Honor scandal, led by Tony Blair, involved wealthy donors nominating millions to the Labour Party for peerages, leading to a police investigation but no charges, damaging its credibility.
What do you think of him? Some of his colleagues in government are quite critical of you.
Well, I'm going to see him in about an hour, so I have to be nice, right? But I actually think he's very nice. I think he ran a great race. He did very well. It's very early, but he's popular, and I'll be seeing him, and I'll send you regards. Who are you with?
The 2010 controversy involved property developer David Abrahams, who secretly funneled $5,000 into Labour's coffers through intermediaries, avoiding donation disclosure rules. When exposed, Labour was forced to return the money, and several top officials resigned. Labour has repeatedly been involved in financial scandals, despite branding itself different from Conservatives.
Donald Trump compared to the enthusiasm when he's there saying congratulations on winning the presidency that I never thought you should have been able to stand for.
The Cash for Honor scandal, led by Tony Blair, involved wealthy donors nominating millions to the Labour Party for peerages, leading to a police investigation but no charges, damaging its credibility.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question. He's a champion for farmers in his constituency. My answer is simple, yes. And I don't agree with the leader of the opposition when she says that maternity pay is excessive and that it's gone too far.
I come to the leader of the opposition.
The Labour Party's stance on private healthcare is concerning, as it contradicts the initial pledge made by Prime Minister Stephen Harper to protect the NHS from privatisation. Since taking over, Labour has met with healthcare industry executives and accepted donations from companies linked to private medical services. This has led to provisions that could expand private sector involvement in the NHS, a direct contradiction to the original pledge.
See this coming. If you knew in that wardrobe you got like 16 grand's worth of suits, you'd probably shut up about wallpaper. That's what I would have done about it. But somehow he didn't spot that he didn't join the dots.
And he keeps saying, like, look, I
Then there's the fossil fuel industry. Labour once promised to end oil and gas exploration in the UK, but after taking donations from energy executives, that policy has been watered down. Starmer now says Labour won't issue new licenses except, in specific cases, a loophole big enough to drive an oil tanker through.
Would be of great concern. I mean, it just seems like a crazy thing to want to do in the first place.
Well, yes, Stephen. There were concerns that China, there would be nothing to stop China building a military base on one of the neighbouring islands.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the last thing you need, isn't it? So, historically, the Chagos Islands, they've had no indigenous population. There were freed slaves who moved there. Now, to be fair, we moved them all off in the 1960s. Many of them came here. Some of them went to Mauritius, where I gather they weren't treated very well. So I think this is a sort of almost a sort of knee-jerk anti-imperialist sort of thing.
The question revolves around whether Labour policies are influenced by voters or those who make the largest checks, requiring a closer look at the closest individuals.
Her characterisation of the Prime Minister is right. I think he's motivated by public service. There have been campaign contributions around presentation. There's nothing new or unusual about those.
Labour have now confirmed rules on ministers accepting hospitality will be made more transparent.
Morgan McWeeny, chief advisor and strategist for Starmer, has strong ties to corporate lobbying firms and has significantly influenced Labour's donor strategy, pushing Starmer to align with business leaders, believing it will make Labour more electable.
The election was pure fantasy.
Mr. Speaker, he will not make that commitment. That is very clear. All that he is doing,
I'm going to hear the questions. If the people who don't want to hear it, they can leave now. Come on.
Mr. Speaker, he will not make that commitment, and yet the world is getting more dangerous. His Chancellor's budget.
David Evans, Labour's General Secretary, is known for his aggressive party management, purging left-wing members and centralizing control, causing anger among grassroots activists who believe Labour is being transformed into a corporate-friendly machine.
Labour's private school raid risks forcing out ethnic minority families, according to Candice Braithwaite, who fears this government tax hike could stop social mobility. And the thinking is, it says here, that there are ethnic minority families working hard, working extra jobs to pay those schools.
Peter Mandelson, a key architect of New Labour under Tony Blair, has re-emerged as one of Starmer's closest advisors. With extensive connections to international financiers and business elites, Mandelson has influenced Labour's recent policy shifts, leading the party to move away from its working-class roots. The backlash against Mandelson is causing serious fractures within Labour itself.
It's far-right hatred of Britain First, the hatred that saw the death of Joe Cox. For all of those reasons and so much more, people are coming out in droves today to make it absolutely clear that Donald Trump is not welcome in our country. I don't think any of us could have believed.
Trade unions, including the UK's largest union, Unite, are separating themselves from Labour leader Stephen Harper, who has been criticised for taking money from billionaire donors and disregarding workers' concerns. The party's youth wing has also condemned Starmer's approach.
Absolutely absurd. He actually said, "No way would I want Trump over for dinner." Well, I don't know about you, but after looking at that clip, I'm pretty sure that Trump would probably rather listen to Kamala Harris's hyena-like...
The party is cracking down on internal dissent, silencing critics and suspending members who speak out, despite concerns about labor issues. MPs like Zara Sultana and Diane Abbott have faced increasing pressure from the leadership.
These 7 Labour MPs that have already been suspended over the King's speech, it all just adds to the sense.
The speaker reportedly expressed disinterest in inviting Trump for dinner, suggesting that Trump might prefer Kamala Harris's henna over the current situation.
All the big shots sitting there, the plutocrats at the inauguration, sitting in front of his cabinet choices, more important than his own cabinet, that is a very distressing signal to send to the world.
The Guardian and Mirror have reported on the controversy, but coverage has been less than in past labor scandals. Some argue mainstream media is protecting Starmer as the only viable alternative to conservatives.
The only ticket in town tonight. How can we keep this relationship between these countries so special when there is nobody here from the Labour Party?
Well, you're right, and in fact, many people here have said, Mandelson, are you serious? And that was said by an incoming cabinet member of the Trump regime. The other thing that's been discussed by everybody is, what the hell were you thinking about with the Chagos Islands, Diego Garcia? The honest truth is that our government is getting off to the worst possible start with the incoming Trump administration. And my other worry, if we pivot towards the European Union, that makes getting a trade deal of some kind with Trump's America even more difficult. I suggest Keir Starmer has a long, hard think over the weekend about what this relationship...
The media has consistently attacked Jeremy Corbyn, a Labour leader, over minor controversies, despite accepting gifts and questionable donations, despite the same level of scrutiny for Starmer.
TV News in the UK.
Okay, good.
But would you rather Nigel Farage would have had a bigger role?
Well, I think Nigel is great. I mean, I've known him for a long time. He had a great election, too. He picked up a lot of seats, more seats than he was allowed to have, actually. They acknowledge that he won, but for some reason you have a very strange system of...
Independent journalists and activists on social media have exposed details the mainstream press won't touch, generating millions of views on Starmer donor ties, proving the public doesn't buy the media's narrative.
I know the Tories have been doing it, but there's no point in shouting from the sidelines all these years and then saying, well, we'll do the same then.
If he wants to take free gifts, what's the problem with that? You know, would you take a free gift?
The battle over Starmer's donations is not just about donations, but who controls the narrative. Polls show Labour leading concerns, but public trust in Starmer is slipping. Voters who supported Labour in 2019 are now questioning whether Starmer is truly different from the Tories.
This was right to ask NATO for more money, and he said that we were old partners offering new ways of working. So check, 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 or tick, 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 as we would say in the UK. Every single one of those points hit on the nail. And I can say, having heard a speech from the Foreign Secretary David Lammy recently, he is saying very similar things.
All right, thank you so much. Really interesting to get that perspective. And Joel, I know she was scribbling furiously as we were watching that there.
If Labour wins, Starmer will face a significant debt to wealthy donors, potentially influencing policies based on financial backing rather than the needs of ordinary citizens. Voters must decide whether to support Labour, knowing the party is deeply influenced by corporate interests, or seek alternative options, risking a divided opposition that could allow Conservatives to stay in power.
It's just no to the UN and their human rights regime. I think that Theresa May has been terribly humiliated today. She has looked like The
media has exhibited intense reactions, with some outlets defending Starmer and others questioning the Labour leader's ties to Lord Ali, questioning if these relationships undermine public trust.
To help the leader of the opposition. If she's going to complain about scripted answers, it's probably best not to read that from a script.
What I will say about Farmers is this: I'm glad she's raised. I'm glad she's raised.
Social media has sparked criticism from Labour supporters, particularly those supporting Starmer's transparency promises, comparing the scandal to the Tory party's donor-driven politics, raising questions about the influence of billionaire donors and foreign money on policy decisions. Labour leader Starmer has vowed to stop accepting personal gifts like luxury clothing and event tickets, despite public pressure. Critics argue that this is just damage control, And the real issue is the larger pattern of influence. If Labour wins the next election, this controversy won't disappear. The real issue is not just the gifts, but the larger pattern of influence.